So World of Warcraft released in 2004, and I originally played it back in, I think, about 2005. I don't quite remember the exact date, but I know it wasn't right at launch. I think I was about 17 at the time, and it was the second MMO I ever played, the first being the amazing and sorely missed Star Wars Galaxies. The way I got into it was that my friend was coming over to spend the night, as he sometimes did, and we would stay up all night playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3, or maybe Worms Armageddon, and he started telling me about this game he was playing called World of Warcraft. He told me how you could make your own character and choose a race and a class, and how you would start exploring the world, and then when you opened up your map, you would realize that the large area that you had been wandering around in was just a small zone in a much larger continent. And then you could zoom out even further, and there was a whole nother continent to explore. And this is what really got me. I was always really into the idea of exploring a massive world where I plopped down a character that I made myself. Games that promised that I could do that, like World of Warcraft or The Elder Scrolls, were very likely to get me super hyped. So I went out and I got a copy of World of Warcraft and tried it out. Now obviously I can't show footage of the exact experience I had from 2005 or from the character I made, since they are long gone, and so when I was deciding what kind of character to make for this video, I actually decided to check out Season of Discovery, since as far as I can tell, it's basically just vanilla WoW, but with some small twists and some added gameplay variety. And that sounded like a lot of fun to me, so all of the footage in this video is going to be from Season of Discovery. And with all of that said, let's get right into the character creation. So let's get the ball rolling and start making a new character. I never get tired of seeing a good old character creation screen. One of my favorite things to do in games is make my own character, come up with a little bit of personality or backstory for them. I was doing this when I played the game originally back in 2005 as well. So I guess that's role-playing, though I didn't think of it in those terms at the time. The character creation in WoW Classic is certainly nothing too impressive by today's standards. There's no sliders, there aren't a ton of hair options, and the part that really gets to me is you can't change your look later, so you better not have any regrets. But if we go by the standards of 2004, it's pretty good. The thing I really like is how fleshed out the races and classes feel. The classes in particular just all sound so cool to play and have great backgrounds. My very first character in WoW, back when I played in 2005, was a Night Elf Hunter. I always really loved characters that focused on animal companions or nature stuff. In Star Wars Galaxies I played a creature handler for a long time, and in Diablo 2 I played a lot of necromancer, up until the expansion dropped, at which point I promptly switched to playing a ton of druid. So it's no surprise that I chose Hunter as my first character, though I do remember seriously considering druid as well for the nature magic and the shapeshifting, which is really cool. Only later would I learn that Shaman is also a very nature-focused class, but has to do more with the elements, and actually, that's my favorite class to play nowadays. I don't specifically remember why I chose Night Elves, other than maybe the nature aesthetic, but I probably just thought they looked cool. It wasn't long before I made a dwarf though, mainly because of this guy right here. I just love all of the vibes in this part of the game cinematic. Lone dwarf hunter hiking through the snowy woods. I imagine he's, maybe making a stop at Ironforge over there to sell hides from stuff he's hunted and maybe grab a pint. It's just chef's kiss. Between their great vibes in World of Warcraft and a few other games over the years like Dwarf Fortress, as well as, of course, Lord of the Rings, things like that, dwarves have become my favorite fantasy race, and I tend to play them a lot in WoW. And in this game, they have these super cozy burrows. I love these things. We're going to talk more about these later. All that to say, I'm going to make a dwarf hunter like the one in the cutscene. So we are going to make Libash, a lone dwarf hunter who will trek through the lands of Cosmodon with his loyal bear. And with all of that solidified, I decided to change up the format of this video a little. Rather than only talking about my personal history with the game or the things I like or dislike, I think we'll start with the story of Libash the Hunter. I don't know if it's just me, but these intro cinematics are so well done, and they never fail to get me in character for the adventure to come. It's always such a rush of excitement, and the voice work and writing here are just great. I mean, listen to this line.
The spirits of the ancient kings watch over you, and the very mountains are your strength.
That is just wonderful. It gives me goosebumps. And this is going to be an ongoing theme. One thing that World of Warcraft does really, really well is atmosphere. So here is Libash, fresh recruit in Cold Ridge Valley. And it looks like immediately somebody out here wants his attention, so we're going to go see what this is all about.
Off with you.
Alright, so this is Sten Stoutarm, a good dwarven name, and he's going to give Libash his first task. So Sten wants us to have gloves so that we don't get frostbite, and he'll give us some gloves if we bring him some wolf meat. Seems like a fair trade, but he's not only not wearing gloves, he has a sleeveless shirt on. At first I thought maybe he was just trying to scare us with the frostbite thing so that we would get him some wolf meat. But looking around a bit, it looks like most people here are wearing gloves, or at least more clothes than Sten. So maybe Sten just runs a little hot-blooded, or maybe he just wants to show off those stout arms. Or maybe he's out on his workout routine right now, who knows. Whatever the case, it is time for Libash to go off and gather some wolf meat. And fairly quickly, he finds his first wolf. And after a few skill ups, the first wolf is down, and we get our tough wolf meat. But the wolf drops some gloves, leather gloves in fact. Does this mean we could just skip the first quest? Is it a sign? We'll just hope the gloves Sten gives us are better. Libash puts on his new gloves, and off he goes. After a few more wolves, Libash got his first level up. Very exciting stuff. And when we loot the wolf, we find more gloves. I'm beginning to wonder how these wolves are getting so many gloves, and if Sten has anything to do with this. Libash cautiously continues his quest, occasionally looking over his shoulder now. After collecting enough wolf meat, Libash makes his way back to Sten, and the gloves that Sten offers are indeed better and don't look like the ones we've been finding, so I guess he's in the clear for now. Libash is very close to level 3 at this point, and Sten has 2 more quests to pick up, so we might as well keep working for him. Next up, we need to visit the hunter trainer in Anvilmar nearby and deliver a letter to a camp. Well, off we go. Oh, but also it looks like Balir Frosthammer has a quest for us now. Trog troubles, it seems. We'll see if we get to that, but first we need to visit Anvilmar. After a short walk, we make it there without incident. And just look at this. I always love the architecture in the Dwarven lands. It just looks fantastic. I can almost feel the change in temperature as I walk into the building, going from the biting cold to the cozy warmth. Once again, just a masterclass in atmosphere. We find the hunter trainer, good old Thorgus Grimson, and get to level 3. He also has a quest for us to get our first rune, which I guess is the new Season of Discovery stuff. Very exciting. After a little warming up and some food and drink in Anvilmar, Libash is ready to head back out and get to work on those quests. After some more thrilling adventuring, Libash heads back to Anvilmar to sell some of the loot he got and get some supplies. At this point, we check back with the hunter trainer Thorgus and get Libash's first new ability. He can only afford one, so we choose Serpent Sting. Very exciting stuff. Libash continues his journey and kills some trogs, finds a troll cave, and shows them who's boss around here. In the troll cave, we also find our first rune. I don't think I realized that they work like armor enchantments, sort of. Cool. We equip it onto our gloves and whoa, what a difference this makes. Very cool. We work our way through a few more quests, and eventually we have to return back to Anvilmar to resupply. And we take this time to learn a few more hunter abilities. And things are going fantastic. We can afford all of the abilities now. It's at this point that I realize or remember that Libash has racial abilities. So we promptly add them to our hotbar. I also realize that we are very low on ammo and I have no idea where to buy any. And after spending much longer than I'd care to admit, we finally find the ammo merchant, so we stock up and head out once again. With his new fancy moves, Libash makes quick work of some more trolls and manages to turn in another quest. It would seem our time in Cold Ridge Valley is coming to an end though, sadly. So we make our way to the tunnel that leads to Dunmoreau proper, and say goodbye for now to Cold Ridge Valley. The tunnel, of course, has a trog infestation, but Libash is feeling brave now, and with the last trog that stood in our way down, we emerge on the road to Karanos. We come across our first camp this side of the tunnel, and it's a gunsmith, Hegnar Rumbleshot. He has some good stuff, but it's a bit pricey for us, so sadly we have to pass it by. And after some more walking, we make it to Karanos. Turn in some quests and pick up some new ones, the usual stuff. We also find this guy who gives us a coin. No idea what this is. Moving on. And after a little bit of a look around, Libash is ready for some more adventures. After many more quests and a ton of exploring, Libash is finally ready to learn how to tame a pet. Very exciting. The first step is a boar. That goes fairly well. Next up, our trainer, good old Griff Wildheart, wants us to tame a snow leopard. Okay, no problem. We quickly find a snow leopard, but I realize now that the boar should have been dismissed first, so we make a break for it and the boar gets killed before I figure out how to dismiss it. A little bit of a tragedy there. The leopard chases down Libash, but we start the taming process and all is going well, but I guess we were too close to that mountaineer. It's okay, third time's the charm. We find a new leopard and now we have it. The next task from Griff is to tame a bear. And this time we know we need to dismiss the current tame, so we do that, and of course it attacks us, okay. Luckily the bear is no problem, we find one and we tame it and we bring it back to Griff. And now Libash can tame pets on his own. Amazing stuff. Griff wants us to go to Ironforge and learn how to train pets too now, but first, we need to go tame our own pet. We knew we wanted to get a bear, and after running around for just a little while, we actually run into this guy, which is pretty lucky I think. And this one was a bit high level, so it was actually a pretty close call, but we managed to tame it, and it looks terribly unhappy, and now I'm realizing that I think we need to go to Ironforge in order to learn how to feed pets, so we gotta really book it. And as we make our way to Ironforge, we are confronted with this massive eyesore in the sky, way to ruin the picturesque shot here. Anyway, in Ironforge we make our way around a bit and find the pet trainer. Now we can better take care of Libash's new bear, who we're calling Burr. My creativity knows no bounds. While in Ironforge, Libash also decides to train in skinning and leatherworking. Being an outdoors dwarf, it feels very fitting. Though he did consider herbalism and alchemy, that felt like a good option too. But the big city isn't so much his scene, so once he finishes up his tasks here, he's gonna head back out and keep adventuring. But we do have other things to discuss, so we will catch back up with him a little bit later. Alright, so there's one thing I really need to get out of the way here so that we can focus on other elements of the game, and that is the group content. So I am a weirdo who likes playing MMOs alone. I don't enjoy grouping up with other people. I don't like buying and trading stuff with other players. I can enjoy an occasional interaction with a stranger, like waving at them as I pass them by on the road, but that's about it. Now, I'm not a jerk about it. If people are waiting to kill a particular monster and, they invite me to a group or something, I don't start yelling at them about how I don't accept group invites and how they're harassing me, right? Like I accept and we get it done and then I'm on my way and everything's cool. But yeah, every MMO I play, whether it's World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, Elder Scrolls Online, etc., I mostly try to play by myself. I treat them like single-player games. So I won't be talking about much in regards to the group content of World of Warcraft in this video. I realize that may be really weird, and if you are really interested in the group content in World of Warcraft, especially in Classic, there's probably a million other videos that are going to be able to talk about it. But coming back to the topic of why I play this way, I figured I'd talk about it because there's always a question I see come up whenever I say this kind of stuff or if I see other people say this stuff. The question being, why would you play an MMO? There are so many single-player RPGs with better story, or better combat, or better insert thing here. And for me, the answer is just really simple. I just like MMOs. At least the ones I play. I like the structure of an MMO a lot. And in the case of World of Warcraft, I like how I make my own character and I feel really small in a vast world with people who are way more powerful and important than me. I like going around just helping people. People being NPCs, of course. I see people, real people now, often talking about how some of their favorite memories in MMOs or other online games are often of a social element. And maybe they lament that there are more options for not engaging socially in modern MMOs. People will bring up how they used to see that their friends would play and they would be higher level and so they would try to catch up. Or maybe helping a friend who's behind get caught up by giving them some gold or power leveling them or whatever. Or maybe they had an encounter with a random high-level stranger that stopped and gave them a bunch of money. Things like this. I totally get that. Those are awesome memories, and I think back in 2005, I also enjoyed that stuff. But nowadays, I mostly just like being off on my own. I've had people try to give my new characters money, and I just reject it and tell them, thank you, but save it for somebody else. I guess I just like making sort of a self-sufficient type character. I do very occasionally enjoy playing Battlegrounds in World of Warcraft, but generally speaking, I don't like competitive stuff either, since it feels kind of stressful, and I mostly just like chilling out. And also, I'm just terrible at this stuff, and I have no incentive to get better. I don't know why I'm like this. Maybe I'm just a weirdo, it's fine, but I genuinely have more fun playing this way. Playing MMOs as if they were single-player games. I've been playing MMOs for over 20 years off and on now, and I went through multiple phases. So let's talk about that a little bit. The first phase is what I like to call the Lost Puppy era. A lot of us were sort of in the same boat at the beginning. Many of us didn't know much, and we were socializing, trying to figure stuff out together. Grouping up, chatting, learning the game together. That sense of wonder was still there, and I think that when people feel nostalgic about their favorite MMOs, this is often the era that they're fondly remembering. The second phase I went through was what I call the meta era. So the way this played out for me was maybe I played the game a lot at this point, and maybe a bunch of other games like it too. Now YouTube is super popular, and there are 5 million guides on how to play your character efficiently, and how to set up your build, and what new patch changes are coming, and how to deal with them, and what to be angry about, and what it means for your raid spot, etc. You get the picture. And I think a lot of people who play MMOs or these sort of online games like Diablo, things like that, I think a lot of them are here now. Especially the people who mostly only play one game. Now, I did do some raiding back in the Burning Crusade days, so we're talking like 2007, and I just hated it. I really disliked going on the same thing over and over and quote-unquote mastering it. I also tried the whole looking up builds thing, and I've tried that with multiple games, and trying out what people were saying were the best moves and rotations, etc., and I realized I hated that too. Not just in World of Warcraft, but just in general. I really hated the feeling that my agency was being taken away by efficiency. Like, I couldn't build my character how I wanted anymore. The whole thing just started to feel like I was researching to play a character that I didn't want to play. Now, this might sound weird, but I actually really like being mediocre at games. I like the feeling like I'm being challenged and like there's stuff that I don't know and there's stuff that's just too hard. It makes it feel like there's always something to look forward to. And because I play a lot of games, I never play one game long enough to be really, really good at it. And then by the time I go back to it, I suck again. It's great. It's a really wonderful situation. Now, if you're somebody who really values your own skill level, and you really like metagaming and finding good builds online, the hardcore rating, all of that, that's fantastic. There are a ton of options for you, and wow, at least I think there are. I'm not the best person to ask, honestly. But the point is, you do you, and be happy. But for me, I went through this phase, and I'm not there anymore. The third and final phase of my personal MMO and gaming in general journey, which is where I am now, I'm calling the Iron Man chillin' phase. Iron Man being a reference to RuneScape. Nowadays, I really enjoy just playing the game without worrying about the meta or patch changes or what's efficient. I play alone, spend a lot of my time just running around and looking at scenery, doing quests, trying to be self-sufficient and leveling up alts in a very non-efficient way. I also prefer playing in RP servers because even though I don't go too out of my way to roleplay, sometimes you see some really fun interactions there. Unfortunately, the Season of Discovery one was sadly locked, so I couldn't make a character there. I actually really love dungeons in games too, but since I don't want to group up, I try to wait until I'm a few levels ahead and then try to check out the dungeon and see how far I can get, which is usually not very far, unless I'm well above the level of the dungeon, but it's still fun. Anyway, I'm sorry if you were hoping I'd talk more about the group content in the traditional sense or endgame stuff in this video, but it's just not my vibe, I guess, and that's okay too. Alright, so let's talk about crafting and gathering in World of Warcraft. I always really love the idea of crafting and gathering in games, and I love the feeling of making my own gear and items with materials I found myself. That being said, the World of Warcraft classic crafting and gathering experience is not my favorite at this point. I think other games have just improved upon this a lot over the years, but it's a 20-year-old game, so I gotta cut it some slack. Still, I do think that there's fun to be had here in finding the materials and seeing if you can make an upgrade for yourself, especially if you're playing a sort of self-sufficient character like I am. So you're not relying on dungeon drops, or you're not using the auction house, that sort of thing. Also, I always think of this every time I look at World of Warcraft's professions, including modern WoW, but where are woodworking and woodcutting? I feel like someone able to gather wood and make bows and staves would make a lot of sense in the game. Weird. I think my main complaint with the crafting and gathering in WoW is that I would love for it to feel more useful while leveling up. But as it is, it feels kind of like I have to go really out of my way to grind materials and profession levels just to keep up with my character's needs. Which I wouldn't mind so much if the grinding was really fun, but it usually just boils down to making the same leather vest 500 times. I wish maybe there were like repeatable crafting quests or something like that to get experience in a more varied way. Overall, I like the crafting and gathering system and I'm glad it's here, but it's not my favorite, and I think I would like it more if there were just a few tweaks to it. So a lot of what you do in World of Warcraft to level up is questing. The quest diversity in Classic is, how shall I put it, very old school. You've got the kill stuff quests, the find stuff quests. Sometimes you've got the find stuff inside the stuff you kill quests. There's a lot of talk to a person quests and escort quests. Now, I grew up with these kind of games, so it really doesn't bother me at all, but yeah, there isn't anything super diverse here in terms of questing. Though I do think the actual quest writing is pretty good. Depending on where you're questing, the different NPCs have personalities that can make the questing more fun, though a lot of the personalities do just boil down to their racial stereotype. They're still pretty fun to read usually, and there are some good standouts in the questing for sure. So let's talk about drop rates for things like quest items and such, and let me tell you, these are definitely some of the drop rates of all time. I actually don't mind the slow drop rates, maybe I'm just old, but the slower drop rates means I'm switching up tasks less often. Modern MMOs, modern WoW included, have much better drop rates, which makes it so that you're going through quests faster, which then means you're moving on from everything faster, and while sometimes I am in the mood for a faster experience, the slower approach is kind of a nice change of pace. I don't think I'd say I like one system more than the other, but something I like about the slower pace is that it lets me get into an almost meditative state. Just killing boars over and over waiting for the ribs to drop. It may not be for everyone, but the rare drops don't bother me that much, at least as a casual player. Alright, let's talk about combat. Now, it's actually been a while since I played Vanilla WoW, and after leaving Coldridge Valley and going through Dune Moreau proper, I definitely felt a difficulty spike. As a hunter without a pet especially, it was always very tense when an enemy saw me first, because then I didn't get to use my ranged moves, which left me sweating every time wondering if that enemy was going to kill me. A couple times I even ran to nearby guards so that they could kill whatever was trying to kill me. So thanks for that, Mountaineers. I forgive you for killing that snow leopard during my taming quest. I was doing a quest over in Frostmane Hold to kill trolls at level 9, and I got to the point where I decided to actually Hearthstone back to Karanos and come back to that quest after a few levels. Granted, as I mentioned, I'm someone who is absolutely not a WoW expert button pusher, in spite of having played the game on and off since launch, but this feeling of tension in combat was really neat. I really like this, actually, especially since, at least at the lower levels, the combat feels pretty slow in Vanilla WoW. I'm not scrambling to press a million buttons or dodging out of things constantly, and so I have time to take in everything that's happening, slowly watching my health inch down, which actually leads to more tension. Sort of reminds me of playing roguelikes, where every turn you're wondering how the battle's gonna play out. The slower pace, coupled with the higher difficulty, made for a very engaging combat experience all the way through. My absolute favorite thing about this game is the world. The setting, the lore, the style, the stories happening around the world get me so immersed into it, and it's one of my favorite fantasy worlds to explore. I really enjoy just going to locations and hanging out. I particularly like the Cosmodan region, obviously because dwarves, and Loch Modan is maybe my favorite zone in the whole game. It's a toss-up between that or Dún Morogh, but yeah, I really love Loch Modan, so you can probably imagine how I feel about the zone changes that happened with the Cataclysm expansion pack. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, I cannot overstate how much I love these dwarven burrows. You see them a lot in Dún Morogh and Loch Modan, which, probably plays a role in how much I love those zones. And I just love these. They're like little stony hobbit holes. They're just fantastic. I saw the recent announcement that World of Warcraft Modern is getting housing, and I think they said one will be in Elwyn Forest for the Alliance, and the other one will be in Durotar, I think, for the Horde. Don't quote me on that. And I really like Elwyn Forest, so, that's pretty cool. But my hope is that in the future they'll add one for each race, because if I can get a little dwarven burrow for my dwarves in World of Warcraft, I'm set. I don't need any more updates for the game. I'm good. But okay, moving on to other areas I really love. Like I said, I really like Elwyn Forest, especially this area around Goldshire. It's vibrant and the tall trees make it hard to see far, which makes it feel bigger than it is. It just has such a classic fantasy feel, and it feels really very evocative of starting out as an adventurer. I really like it here. Next up, we're going to take a boat ride over to Kalimdor. And we'll take a minute here to appreciate these boats. I really like the vibes here, like crates that are hanging from the ceiling and, like just the decorations, like the barrels and crates outside here. And like the boat just looks so cool. I love it. Darkshore is another area I really like. It's got this sort of gloomy, mystical feel to it. But it's a very different kind of gloomy than, say, Duskwood. It's just, I don't know, I like it. I think they really nailed the vibes here. Walking a little bit further and Darkshore gets us over to Ashenvale. This area is great too. I love how different this forest feels from Elwyn Forest. And the main reason that we are here is because Ashenvale is home to one of my favorite locations in the whole game. And that is the Zoram Strand. Now I adore the vibes here. It's just so mysterious. The game does a really good job with the changes in lighting, ambiance, and music in every zone. But especially here, I think. This just feels like such a surreal place to me. When I stare off into the ocean here, past the ruins, I get this feeling of endlessness, I think. It's hard to describe or put into words, but I think that's one of the reasons why I like this feeling in this zone so much. Definitely one of my favorite locations in the game. I also really love Black Fathom Deeps here in the Zoram Strand. It's probably my favorite dungeon, so I was trying to sneak inside to take a look, but I guess it got a serious power-up in Season of Discovery, and it was tough trying to get in. I managed to make it to the entrance, but I was unable to actually go inside. I don't know if maybe I'm too low level, but yeah, I couldn't make it inside. A real bummer. And if we go just a little bit farther than Ashenvale, we get to Ashara, and this is another one of my absolute favorite zones, right up there with Dún Morogh and Loch Modan. I just love the look and feel of this place, and this was one of the last zones I made it to when I first played WoW on my Night Elf Hunter. I never did get to max level on that character. Ashara also has a similar vibe to the Zoram Strand for me, where there's this feeling of endlessness or eternity or something as I stare off into the ocean. I think it's a combination of the ancient ruins coupled with the music, the colors, and the lighting. But yeah, it's really awesome and surreal and kind of haunting. I do have a few more honorable mentions of zones that I love, including Mulgore, Fairless, and the Hinterlands. I particularly like the Hinterlands. But walking from zone to zone at level 20 in Classic WoW is super time consuming, so I decided to prioritize a few of my absolute favorites for the video. There's also a bunch of small areas that I really love in the game, and these little areas aren't in a specific zone, but just little vibes that the game creates everywhere. Like, the game has a lot of graveyards actually, because that's where you respawn when you die, but do you ever just stop and look at these places? They're just so fascinating to me. There's something about them. They're just very quiet and still, sort of as they should be, and you rarely ever see players hanging out here. I love these. They just have a ton of vibes for me. Also, I am a huge fan of a good bridge. And World of Warcraft has a ton of good bridges. I'm just going to show a couple of the ones I really liked, but I could do an entire video on bridge appreciation in World of Warcraft. I mean, just look at this one by Ashara. This is just fantastic. There's a bunch of like little details in the world too, like this broken down boat. I have no idea if it's been here at the frozen lake for a year or a decade, or if it's just a winter thing, like this just happens every winter. No clue, but I love these little world details like this. This is also where I noticed that there are footprints in the snow, which I found to be really impressive for a game from 2004. I love this. I could go on and on about all the locations I love and all of the little details that I really like, but I think it's about time we check up on Libash. So at this point, Libash has made it to the wetlands, along with Burr, of course, and he's level 21. Not very far in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, we didn't make it to max level, but really it's very fitting, because the first time I played WoW all those years ago on my Night Elf Hunter, that character also didn't make it to max level. If I recall correctly, I stopped playing that character at the inn in Winterspring. So you know, it's poetic. Now I don't know if Libash will continue his journey or not. Maybe it should be up to all of you. Would you want to see a part 2 of this? Let me know. I had a really good time revisiting classic WoW. There's a lot of great things in the game that I didn't really talk a lot about, like the music and the sound effects, which are fantastic. It's just really great that the game is so very easily accessible. It always makes me sad when older games are super hard to find or hard to get up and running on modern PCs, etc. But having a classic version of WoW around for people who prefer it, or just for people who want to bask in the nostalgia, or for people who never got to play it, this is just really great stuff. Also, the monetization is pretty non-intrusive in this, which is nice, and I feel like your money goes a long way here. You have to pay for the game and you have to pay for a monthly subscription, but then you get access to modern WoW and classic WoW. Oh, and you get like 5 other versions of classic WoW. It's a little confusing because there's so many different versions of WoW now, but at least there's options, which is great. And if you've made it this far, you have my very special thanks for listening to me yammer on about my WoW nostalgia. Also, if you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button. That's the only way you can communicate to me that you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, because that's the only way I can communicate to you that I have a new video out. And now, let's just hang out here in Azeroth and enjoy some absolutely wonderful vibes here in World of Warcraft. Thanks for watching.